Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. Justin Baker, thine co-host, here with me via Skype. Hi, Justin.
Thine co-host. I truly appreciate it.
I'm feeling very British today. I'm not going to try a British accent on the air because I don't want to insult our British listener. But
listener.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we have anyone from the UK that listens. I haven't looked at our map recently. It's mostly Canada and the US. We do have a small following in like New Zealand. And
That's
then
amazing.
I think a few in Sweden out there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. People listening from all over the world. Probably who knows? I mean, I would guess that maybe they're like Canadian American people that are over there, or maybe it's just people who are super into hockey who are Australian or what's a New Zealander? Is it a New Zealander?
Kiwis.
All right,
Kiwis.
Yeah, there you go, Kiwis. But yeah, so on today's show, we are going to finally finish with the Metropolitan division with two teams that have been around for a long time, the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers. And I think it's almost fitting. It was purely by accident, just because of time constraints, that we end up with these two teams. But I do think the Flyers, there's a lot to talk about with the Flyers. We can go a lot of places. And the New York Rangers, despite going to the conference finals, did make some pretty big changes in their forward group. So we'll definitely talk about that. And there's plenty to talk about here for this episode. And maybe in the end we'll just toss out a few maybe some league notes, things that are going on that we just got to hit on. But as we dive into these two teams, I think it's fitting to start with John Tortorella speaking to the media just a couple of days ago. He was speaking to Sirius XM NHL Network, and he said this, quote, "I have major concerns about the locker room. I've spent some time in the office talking to players, personnel, the general manager, Chuck Fletcher, all the front office. I have major concerns about what goes on in there. Before we even step on the ice, situations and standards and accountability in the room is forefront. You can't get squat done on the ice until you get your room straightened out, and I think we have a little bit of work to do there." So he goes from saying he has major concerns to we have a little bit of work. I think he's just trying to be nice. So I think that's a good lead-in to a discussion on this season, because I don't know about you, it sure sounds like Tortorella is about to maybe make some recommendations for who should be playing here, who shouldn't, and how certain players should be playing.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I mean, look, this Philadelphia team was expected to make a big splash this offseason. You heard they were going hard after Johnny Gaudreau and really wanted this guy. I mean, the hometown guy, right? Just a few miles down the road from Philly and New Jersey there. But look, they swung and missed on just about every free agent that they went after, and ended up having to trade for Tony DeAngelo as really their only major piece up front on the ice. Now, off the ice, right, John Tortorella was it. He was the big acquisition. He was the big signing, I guess, if you want to call it that. And really, I think a lot of people kind of expected this to be the guy here because he kind of fits that identity, right? He's kind of old school a little bit, but still grinds it out a little bit, a little hard nosed, and I think that kind of fits the Broad Street bully mentality that I think this fan base would like to see them get back to. So, yeah, I mean, look, on paper, this team seems like they should have been more successful than they were last year. And if Torts comes out and says, hey, you know what, we have a problem with the locker room, right? This could be a big reason why this team just wasn't as successful as maybe everybody thought they could have been last year, right? I mean, I think in my preseason rankings last year, I think I had them as a bubble team potentially making the playoffs, and they were far from that. I mean, they ended up finishing with 61 points, a meager, over 40 points, I mean, basically from making the playoffs, and a negative 87 goal differential. It was
not to mention a 2-8 record in the last 10 games. Sometimes you see these teams that, well, once they have nothing to lose, they start to loosen up a little bit, and they win some games. They have a decent record towards the end of the year, and that definitely did not happen. Like, look towards Ottawa. Ottawa 7-2-1 in their final 10 games. Buffalo 6-4 in their final 10. Winnipeg 6-4. So you had some teams that were like Vancouver 6-2-2. Once the pressure was relieved, they played better, and you definitely did not get with that with the Flyers. They were just I would say, is it fair to say that the one bright spot was the fact that Carter Hart was not horrible?
Yeah, absolutely.
He was fine. Now, like a .905 save percentage isn't great, but it's a far cry from the .877 that he had in 2020, 2021, and we can excuse some of that and the team was rough in front of him, and he had a really nice start. As the season got worse for the Flyers, there wasn't much chance for Carter Hart. I thought he had a much better year, a more encouraging year at least.
Yeah, he was definitely. I mean, look, you look at the year before that, and I started having doubts, right? I mean, even though he is still only 24 years old, you think, okay, well, that previous season, you're thinking, gosh, did they really push him too hard, too fast to come in and be the savior of this franchise in the net? And, is it just not going to work out for this guy? Is it going to turn out to be another Mackenzie Blackwood, right? Everybody who had, honestly, I think Carter Hart had higher expectations, but still there was the hope that maybe he could be that franchise guy. And I think last year kind of proved that, hey, you know what? He's still a very capable goaltender. I think he's still growing, still developing. 24 is still, young in a goaltender's development. So he's got a couple years left to really come out and, say, hey, you know what? I'm the guy. And I think, really there's no succession plan in Philly. There's no potential guy up behind his back that could potentially come in and steal the show. So, as
of right now, Felix Sandstrom is listed as the number 2 goalie in Philadelphia, who he played upwards of 45 games for the Lehigh Flyers, and had a pretty decent record down there, like decent numbers down there. But another young goaltender, so you got to wonder, do the Flyers maybe go out and look at bringing someone in after training camp? If someone goes down, they really don't have anyone else down the pipe that you'd want to be your starting goaltender or even your backup goalie in the National Hockey League. So you wonder, there's still guys like a Braden Holtby's out there. Well, that's it. Braden Holtby's
well, that's
out
it.
there. So would Braden Holtby go to Philadelphia? Probably not.
Yeah. So what I'll say, though, Philly did go out and they made a splash in the KHL, and they did bring in Ivan Fedotov. I'm not sure if I'm even saying that right. Fedotov? Yeah, maybe Fedotov. I have no idea how to pronounce it.
I would guess that it's Fedorov, but with a T instead of an R. Fedotov.
There you go. I like that. I mean, he was a 7th-round draft pick, but last year in the KHL,
he crushed it.
He was lights out, right? In the playoffs, 22 games, 1.85, .937 save percentage. So there's a little hype around him, and I think he could come in and challenge for a few games. But, is he ready for the show yet? I don't know. Some guys, swing and miss. Other guys
playing on the big ice,
KHL
too.
Yeah, exactly. So, who knows? But, he's still there, right? So they have at least, I think, a good number 3, maybe potentially number 2. But either way, right, there's no veteran guy there that, when you do get worried about Carter Hart, like when Brian Elliott was there, you said, okay, cool. You know what? We can trust this guy to come in for 20 games and even things out while Carter Hart gets his shit together kind of thing. But there's no one really there. So,
I suppose that's a little bit of a committee backup. Maybe you're going to hope that the signing in the KHL, Fedotov, can come up and challenge for that spot. If he doesn't, I think you're okay. Sandstrom has kind of proven that he can at least show up in the NHL. I mean, he played 5 games last year, 910 save percentage. So it's not as if he played terribly. Played really well when he was up. So you're going to kind of play that by ear, I think, if you're the Flyers. Speaking of, protecting the net, I think with this Flyers team, it really all started with that back end, which was an absolute disaster last year. Your number 1 defenseman, Ivan Provorov, had a down year, and him and Travis Sanheim both having down years, and now you're kind of at this crossroads. Obviously, with what Tortorella said, he's saying like there's some issues here, and I'm wondering if that is a part of it. That your number one defenseman, maybe there's something going on. It seemed like there was something happening last year. He was struggling. You're going to give him another chance, obviously. But Sanheim's a UFA at the end of this year. No guarantee he's back, or no guarantee you even want him back. And I think bringing in Tony DeAngelo was a nice move. He'll certainly put up He'll put up 50 points. It's almost a guarantee he'll put up 50 points. So that's going to help your power play. But is he going to come out and make a huge difference 5-on-5? That's ultimately going to, that's going to be a big question. Is can he come out and really be the difference maker that you probably hope that he will be? But it's a nice move. I mean, they didn't give up the world to get Anthony DeAngelo as an RFA who wasn't probably going to sign in Carolina anyways. So, yeah, I mean, he put up 51 points in 64 games last year. You got to think he'll put up points again. But is it enough on the back end, especially with the question marks still about Ryan Ellis?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Because, listen, I think the Tony DeAngelo signing was, again, a little controversial. You got a team that doesn't really have an identity, right? They're not Carolina where they have a stability as far as an identity, leadership, and coaching is concerned, right? So you hope that Torch comes in here, he fixes that locker room, and maybe straightens out Tony DeAngelo. But, to me, I think if he starts the season presumably on the top line with Provorov, I think that's going to allow a guy like Provorov to kind of settle back into more of a defensive game and not really have to worry about producing the offense, right? He doesn't have to be that guy, because literally last year he was the only one that was counted on to produce any offense for this defense. So there was a lot on his shoulders, and now you alleviate some of that pressure. And hopefully, with Ryan Ellis, again, I know he's not starting the season, but he is expected to return at some point. So, with that mentality that Ryan Ellis will be back at some point, and then you have, honestly, a pretty good top four between Provorov, DeAngelo, Sanheim, and Ryan Ellis. I think that would work out pretty good on paper. But,
right. Theoretically, they should be good on paper, which is what we thought last year.
Right.
And it just didn't happen last year for them. And all this is really compounded by the fact that we're walking in this year with a very similar forward group, right? Like Kevin Hayes, Van Riemsdyk, Atkinson, Konechny, Farabee, Lawton, Owen Tippett. Like we're walking in with a similar team. Not Owen. Owen Tippett was traded there last year. I meant to say Morgan Frost. So you've got a very similar group up front, minus Claude Giroux, who was your point per game
your
guy.
Captain.
And suddenly now you're going to walk into this year, and do we really think that they're going to be better than last year, plus Anthony DeAngelo and minus Claude Giroux?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And you talk about locker room, right? You lose a Philadelphia Flyer legend, probably one of the top players in that franchise's history, and you have a guy who basically is taking all that leadership, that locker room presence, and he's gone. He's signed in Ottawa. And, from a production and offensive standpoint, you know what? You're going to replace him. You're getting a healthy Sean Couturier back finally this year. So with him healthy, taking up that number one spot at center, I think you're going to get good production from him, also a good two-way game. But is it enough, right? Because, again, you still have, like you said, that basic same group is coming back. They really didn't lose much. I know they were trying to get rid of JVR's contract so they could make a play for a free agent. That didn't work out. And, Travis Konechny kind of, I would say most of these players on this team just weren't what we thought they could be last year, and they just kind of had down years. So, when a lot of people around the league were having up years, this team was nothing but down. So a lot more pressure, I think, on this forward group now, especially on guys like Travis Konechny, JVR, Kevin Hayes to really produce, right? Especially those, because again, they have a lot of guys like Kevin Hayes and Couturier signed to long-term deals, and not a ton of cap flexibility coming. And next year, maybe they'll have projected to have $10 to $15 million in cap space. But
right, you got to think Van Riemsdyk's gone. And that's the big savings there. But you are going to have to re-sign Morgan Frost, and if he has a better year than he had last year, then which you're obviously hoping for. You're hoping that Morgan Frost has finally confined himself. He had 16 points in 55 games, but he played pretty well down in the AHL, and this is kind of a make or break year for Morgan Frost. If it doesn't happen, then maybe they don't even match his salary. We saw that several times where there were players. I'm reminded of Sam Steele, who's pretty similar to Morgan Frost in that sense that, hey, Sam Steele never really panned out, and Anaheim went, no, we don't want you. Like, we're gonna spend our resources on someone else. And I think Morgan Frost is at a crossroads similar to Sam Steele from last year. But offensively speaking, I just don't see where the offense is going to come from. You've got Kevin Hayes, never known for just lighting the lamp. It's not as if he's going to go put up a point per game or any. Like last year, he only made it into 48 games, 31 points. He's a 50 point guy maybe in his role as a second line center. But if you think James Van Riemsdyk's going to go out and score you 30 goals again, I've got big questions about that. I know he played all 82 games last year. He had 24 goals, only 38 assists. He was a minus 33, and I know that's not the of all be all, but he does not tip the scales in a positive direction 5-on-5. He's a power play, like he should be more of a power play specialist, and probably playing on a third line is in my mind ideally where Van Riemsdyk comes in. He comes in, he can play on the top power play line or the second power play line and get lots of time in that sense, but plays down the lineup because he just doesn't have it 5-on-5. He doesn't have the same foot speed that he once had. And I think there's so many question marks about every forward here, except for maybe I think I'm okay with saying that Cam Atkinson at 50 points last year and 23 goals. I think that I'm at least with him. I feel comfortable coming into the year saying he's going to have a 30 goal season this year. He did it with Tortorella. So. I think he has the ability to do it again, and I think he'll be one of the driving forces behind this team's season this year. I'm not saying that their season is going to be considered a success, but I think that his season will be a success this year because I'm certain that he's someone that Tortorella can rely on. And
yeah, you certainly hope so, right? I mean, look, this team only had two guys with more than 20 goals, so if you have to rely on JVR and Cam Atkinson to be your go-to guys every night, you're in trouble as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I agree with you. I think JVR's better suited on the third line, a power play guy up front. But Cam Atkinson, yeah, I like what he brings, and I think he's Mr. Consistent, and you know what you're going to get out of him night in and night out. And, it's just the rest of this group, right? You never know what you're going to get. It's kind of a mixed bag. So maybe some of these guys improve a little bit. Maybe Kevin Hayes puts up, 50 points like we talked about, and maybe Travis Konechny finally gets it together. I mean, yes, 52 points wasn't bad, but really he's not good defensively. And if, you're really supposed to be the top winger on this team, 52 points just isn't going to cut it.
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering here what the chances are that the Flyers' first round pick, 5th overall, Cutter Gauthier. I'm wondering what the chances are that he's playing at Boston College. He goes and he plays at Boston College. I wonder if they sign him when his season is over to bring him in and continue his development. If he puts up really good numbers at Boston College, and the Flyers are just pretty confident in him coming to play for them next season, 23-24, maybe they bring him in that month and a half, 2 months early, and have him join that team, which would be, I think, exciting for if you're having a down year. I think that it's fun and it's something to look forward to. Maybe somebody coming in, joining your team in that sense. So can look ahead to that because I don't see this Flyers team even competing for a playoff spot for very long. I don't know how long they'll be in the run. I can see I can see how this Flyers team, with a new fire lit under them from John Tortorella, where they could have a decent start. I just don't know about the middle and the end. I don't know if they have the horses, the players, to be able to contend with the other teams in this division. I just think that there's too much there for this Flyers team. I think this Flyers team is, the way that they didn't sign anyone this offseason, it's almost like they had the offseason that it looked like Calgary was going to have. Like, now Calgary is certainly in a better position like they made it to the second round this last year, but Calgary lost their two best players. And of course they bring in one of them was via trade, and they bring in Huberdeau, but they lose Gaudreau, and it looks like, oh my gosh, this is all going to fall apart. Nobody wants to come here. And they, Brad Treliving has one of the best off seasons for poor hand dealt to great off season that maybe we've ever seen a general manager have to deal with in the cap era. I don't think that's a stretch at all, seeing as I think it's the first time 200-point players left a team in the history of the league the following year. So it's almost like that's the season, the off season that the Flames should have had. The Flyers had it instead.
Oh yeah, it's not pretty, and I'm not too optimistic. I mean, listen, if you want to just jump right into it, right? Ceilings and basements for this team.
Yep.
I'll say it right now. As far as the basement's concerned, this team is going to be tanking for Connor Bedard. I think you'll see them right there towards the bottom, in my opinion, with Arizona, with Montreal, and some of those teams, fighting it out for that number one pick.
Chicago,
for Connor Bedard. Yeah, Chicago. But I mean, on the plus side, right? Even if they, do finish towards the bottom of the league, there is a lot of really good talent at the top of the draft this year, so they could get somebody really nice. Now, as far as the ceiling is concerned, I kind of have to agree with you. I think maybe Torts, lights a fire under their ass to start the season, and they don't finish last in this division, right? That's where I see them. Maybe they hop a team like maybe the Islanders, right? Tank this year and just can't get it together with a new head coach and an aging group of players. And maybe New Jersey just isn't what we thought they were going to be this year. So to me, maybe they don't finish dead last in this division and finish seventh, but that's about as high as I can give them for a ceiling.
Yeah. A ceiling of, I think there is a world that Torts could rip this team into the middle of the division. That's probably the ceiling to me, is like, hey, they have a really nice start or something like that. And, or they have a nice finish to the season because everyone's kind of finally bought into his system and it starts to work. I could see that happening as well. And, by the end of it, maybe they end up in a similar position to that of Columbus or the Islanders last year, where, they missed the playoffs by a good amount. They just happen to be above some of the absolute bottom feeders in this division. But it's tough for me to see that because as I look across the division, I don't see too many teams that got worse, except the Flyers. Like the Flyers
right.
are at least from the beginning of last year to the beginning of this year, the Flyers are definitely, in my mind, on paper, a worse team because you don't have Claude Giroux. There's no other team in this division where you're looking at them going, oh, you lost a really big name player. That's going to hurt. I don't see that across the landscape. So I'm thinking that this isn't going to be a lot of fun for Flyers fans, and it's going to be. It would be almost like a conspiracy theory. You've got Montreal and Philadelphia going up against each other, maybe for the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, like these two powerhouse franchises that are just trying to get the best player in his generation kind of vibe. If one of them beats out Arizona and Arizona is the last place team, people are like the 17 Arizona fans, or I'm sorry, the 3,500 Arizona fans that they're going to sell out every game for. They'll be screaming from the tops of buildings if Montreal or Philadelphia beats them out for that top pick, because Arizona is probably going to finish last place in the league. I don't know that there's like anyone's looking at them going, yeah, they could do decent. No, they're going to be horrible. This is the same time Arizona and Buffalo both tanking for McDavid, and Edmonton tanking. Yeah. And then I think Arizona, that was the year that Arizona took Dylan Strome, right?
Yeah.
Was that year? Yeah.
They lost. Yeah.
And then the Leafs took Marner at 4. Whoops.
Whoops, a daisy.
Arizona. Okay, let's move on to the New York Rangers. Oh, I guess I gave my ceiling and cap. My ceiling is mid-division, and of course my floor is last place in this division, which is where I think they're most likely to finish. Okay, let's move on to the New York Rangers. I mean, as few moves as they truly made, it feels like they made a big splash into their top 6 by removing Strome and adding Ryan Strome and adding Vincent Trocheck. How do you think Trocheck will fit into this lineup?
Well, I mean, I can tell you this right off the bat: you're going to get a more well-rounded center, right? You're going to get a guy. Don't get me wrong. I got nothing against Ryan Strome. I thought he was great, but I think Vincent Trocheck just brings a whole nother nitty-gritty, two-way kind of centerman to this team, right? Where I think Ryan Strome, he's a straightaway forward, right? He's just going to go straight to the net and dish the puck, or you give him the puck and that's it. Really, that's what you see is what you get. And with Vincent Trocheck, I think you're going to get a guy who's a better face-off man and a guy who's willing to go in all the dirty areas of the ice. But I mean, yes, I don't like the term they gave him, but I think in the short term, anyways, he's going to pay off much better than I think Ryan Strome would have. Now, on the flip side, I am a little sad that they were not able to keep, Kopp. I think he fit in very, very well in that second line and seemed to click very well with Artemi Panarin. So I would have liked to have seen that, but as a Wings fan, I'm not too upset about it.
Yeah, right. Andrew Kopp. I don't think anyone thought that he was going to stay there. I mean, he could have signed that similar deal to Trocheck. They could have afforded him, but I think when the opportunity comes, I'll take Trocheck over Andrew Kopp because of the offense that he brings, and because that's the area that the Rangers really needed to focus on, was bringing in someone who can score some goals. I think there's a good chance that Trocheck has a better goal-scoring year than he had this last year with Carolina, 21 goals in 81 games. I think that he's probably more on that 30-goal pace with the Rangers because of the opportunity for the players that he's going to play with and the way that the Rangers play. I think that it just bodes itself better to him scoring goals because he can take so many chances. These guys can take all these chances because they have Igor Shesterkin, and that's kind of how they played their offense. Like, I think head coach Gerard Gallant was like, we've got the best goalie in the world. Let's take chances. And, it worked for most of the season. They were right there. And I think they're only going to be better. And I also, though, think the reason why they're going to be a little bit better than they were last year is that I think you're going to see steps taken by some of their younger guys. I think Julien Gauthier is ready for a bigger role. He proved that in the playoffs. I think Capo Caco is probably in a place now where he's ready to take that step. There's a little pressure taken off because he signed that 2-year deal. And then you've got Lafreniere who really has, this is his opportunity here to score big on his next contract, and this is the year that matters the most in terms of that entry-level deal. So I think they've got a lot of players with a lot to gain, and so I think they will do really well. From an offensive standpoint, I think they're better.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you're going to see a lot of players on this team grow, right? I mean, listen, they got up 2-0 against the back-to-back Stanley Cup champs, and obviously they turned it on. They do what Tampa does best. They know how to win, and you know what? That's no knock on the Rangers at all. I think if anything, that experience to go to battle against the champs like they did and to make it to the conference finals is only going to provide just growth for all of these younger players. I mean, listen, they're one of the youngest teams. I think they are the youngest team in the league. And this back end, I mean, is super young, right? Jacob Trouba is the veteran guy at 28, and everybody else is 24, 24, 21, 20. I mean,
average age 23.3 for this defense.
Right. Yeah, a lot of young players on that back end. And now, me personally, I think they could use somebody on that third pairing, maybe with Braden Snyder to round out get a veteran guy in there. But hey, they'll start the year fine where they are, and no complaints there. So to me, I think they've got all the pieces up front to be a championship team, right? And I think Trocheck is only going to bolster that. Now, hopefully, guys like Alex Lafreniere and Capo Caco take those next steps because, man, I mean, it's make it or break it, I think, for guys like that specifically because Capo Caco, more than anybody else, I think right now they probably don't have the money to hand out two giant contracts to Lafreniere and Caco and even Philip Hedl. So, who's going to go out and grab it, right? Who's going to prove that, hey, you know what, I'm the guy worth keeping around because they've got, Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Trocheck signed to these long-term deals, and, they only have so many dollars to throw around. So right now, someone's got to go get it.
That's very true. I'm already thinking ahead to what the Rangers could do at the trade deadline. As teams start to fall off and look to move players. There are some possibilities, especially, after talking about Travis Sanheim in Philadelphia. I know the Rangers and the Flyers aren't, you're not always dying to make moves with each other, but a UFA, a guy who's, when the Flyers are bad, Rangers are good, who cares? You can get something for him. Travis Sanheim would be a great fit on that back end. He plays the left side. He could play along Braden Snyder. If he's playing down in the lineup, he may be even more effective. He could move up in the lineup for this Rangers team, and he probably wouldn't cost you a ton at the deadline. For a Sanheim, maybe a second round pick or a third and a B-level prospect, something like that. Probably wouldn't be super expensive, but could fill in really nicely, especially come playoff time. But just thinking ahead, there's plenty of moves that this team could make that would improve that back end for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, listen, one team I look at right away that I think is going to be dealing one of their defenders, and I think this is a great veteran guy that I think a lot of teams are going to be clamoring for. That's a John Klingberg, right?
Very true.
He's going to be a UFA after this year. Anaheim to me is probably not making the playoffs. They might squeak in that division, but who knows?
Yeah. And Anaheim just hangs on to half that, and they get a first round pick and more.
Right.
And it works out for everybody in that deal. I wonder. Sometimes those 1-year deals can be deceiving. You look at it, and from like a video game perspective, you're like, oh, this is a perfect deal. You're going to be able to trade this guy at the deadline, and
right.
But if it works really well, he does have a 10-team no trade at the. Oh no, he has a no trade clause from the start of the season to January 1st. So he can't get traded until January 1st. Then it turns into a 10-team no-trade clause. So I guess at trade deadline, it is set up for him to be able to move to 22 possible destinations, which I'm sure he's not going to let himself get dealt to anywhere but a playoff team. But I look at that, and I also wonder, maybe it is that he does really well in Anaheim. I think that he'll be a good fit with their system, with their younger players, and maybe they go, yeah, no, we will sign you to a 4-year deal. I don't think come 31 years old he's getting a 7-year deal, but sure. I think a 4 or a 5-year deal where he's if he's really effective in Anaheim, I think there's a world in which he just re-ups there and stays. And I think a lot of times we look at a deal like that and go, it's a guarantee he's getting traded. But I wonder if ultimately if he stays in Anaheim, we'll see. But we are talking about the New York Rangers. I wanted to ask you what your over-under is for Igor Shesterkin and the amount of games that he will start.
Oh, okay. That's a good question.
Just for context, last year he played in 53 games. and 20 playoff games. So he played in a. We'll just do regular season, but 53 games was his regular season, and that was with Georgiev as the backup. Which I know he didn't have the best year ever for the Rangers, but this year you now have a 37-year-old Yaroslav Halak who played in 17 games last year for the Canucks, and played in 19 the year before that for the Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say first off about Halak, right? I don't think he got in as many games as maybe the team was projecting. They were up against some cap troubles, and once he hit 10 games, a bonus kicked in, and I think for a while there they were trying to trade him and hold off on that and not play him, and then eventually they had no choice.
Yeah, they didn't want him to bonus or whatever it was.
Right, yeah, because, I mean, Thatcher Demko, you can't make him play every single game for like 40 games straight. It's just not,
yes, we can.
Not in today's NHL. So, as far as over-under is concerned for Shesterkin, I think he's probably right in that 55 to 60 game mark. I still think Halak can give you 15 to 20 games, no problem. And then, listen, you still got, you've got Louis Domingue down there who, get the fried pork going. I think he's more than capable of coming in and playing 5 to 10 games if needed. So, because I think, again, especially down the stretch when this Ranger team, potentially has one of those top 3 spots kind of locked up, and who knows, maybe it's a battle and they still have to ride him into the last 10 games there. But I think the hope is that they kind of can cruise into a top 3 spot and then just play Halak a little bit more, maybe give Louis Domingue a couple games here or there so they can keep him rested and keep him fresh for the playoffs because, he's their guy. And, obviously a healthy Shesterkin is only going to take this team as far as, they're only going as far as he's taken them.
So let's go over under 60 games.
Okay. I'll take the under then at that point.
Okay. Under 60.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll say it depends on how well the Rangers are doing. If they need him to play more, I think they can play more. But I do think that the 50 to 55 games that he played last year at 52, I think that's perfect. And, I mean, the way that Louis Domingue played last year, he was stealing some games in the playoffs for the Penguins against the Rangers. It was funny that he went and signed with them, but I don't think that Domingue is the guy you want to rely upon. But if something does happen to Halak, he could play. But I think that you're probably going to see Yaroslav Halak play 25 games or so. Oh, are we? I'm blue.
I'm blue.
It is funny that we were talking about the blue shirts over here. The New York Rangers.
That's great.
Was that your ringtone or something?
No. I had an ad pop up on my, my computer. I forgot that I had the volume on.
What kind of targeted ad is happening where you have a song by, what is it, Eiffel 95 or something? Eiffel 65, right? Eiffel 65?
There you go. Yeah.
Yes, that they are playing blue as an ad. I'm wondering what kind of weird Amazon searches that you have. So.
Oh goodness, no! This was
is that your white noise? A white noise machine that only plays blue.
Something for a company called Salesforce.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Anyways, now I'm gonna start getting Salesforce ads. Thanks a lot. Try to pay for me. My phone is listening. But yeah, it's let's go back to the Rangers again, and let's just give a ceiling and a floor here for this team.
Yeah, ceiling for this team, I'll just come out and say it, Stanley Cup champs. I think, on the back of Shesterkin, they are more than capable of stealing, a series or two with him and Ned. And I think they've got enough firepower up front to be deadly. And, assuming that guys take those next steps, right, that Lafreniere and Hedel, they, take that next leap and become those players that I think they're more than capable of. And, this defense, again, takes another step too. So I think with all those and finally having a captain on board, not that I don't really think it made that much of a difference, but, I think this team is more than capable of winning the cup. Now, As far as baseman is concerned, I think just, probably out in the first round, right? They get a matchup that, doesn't really work in their favor, and things just don't go their way. I think that's something that could happen if they finish in that 2-3, because potentially you could have another Pittsburgh matchup in that first round, and again, with a Pittsburgh team that's making one last run at it, could be deadly for any team in this division, really. So potentially you could match up against a team like that and be out the first round.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they were very close to being out in the first round this last year. I think that the season they had last year was certainly ahead of schedule. I think that it was I don't know if they can repeat it again this next year. I think for this team, the ceiling is that conference finals. I think that there are a lot of teams that are ultimately better than them. Certainly, they could go to the because they have Shesterkin. It's almost like, okay, if Shesterkin's playing at regular levels, like his regular level, and you have the Rangers, I think their ceiling is probably the conference finals. Now, if Shesterkin is playing extra Shesterkin-y, then they could do anything. And while that is the case for any goaltender, any team with any goalie, if he hits crazy high, if we get another Halak with the Canadians, they can do anything, which is true. But I think we all can admit that Shesterkin has maybe the best opportunity to get hot like that. I think that there was a time in the regular season, probably in January, February, where Shesterkin was just unbelievable. And if you get that Shesterkin in the playoffs, they can win the cup. If you get regular Shesterkin, I think this is still a conference final team. So their ceiling kind of varies on where Shesterkin is at, and then I think if this team finishes 2 or 3 in the division, which I think is likely, then I think they could lose in the first round just as easily as they won last year. So I think this is a team that is towards they're in the top 10 of the league, but there is certainly a world in which they lose in the first round, but they could also go to the finals. They've got a large variance in where they could go.
Yeah,
but that all could change if they bring in different players. I mean, one guy we didn't talk about was Vitaly Kravtsov, who I haven't really heard anything new about him and what's going on, other than he wants to get traded. Right, because he asked for a trade, I think it was last season, and nothing has really come of that. So you wonder, maybe this is the year where Kravtsov gets dealt, or does he come in and play for the Rangers? I don't know, but we know that he has a lot of talent, and maybe they can flip him to a lesser team for a somewhat talented player. I got to be honest. I know they have a lot of guys at defense. I wonder if the Rangers aren't in on Jacob Chychrun with the Arizona Coyotes. I think the Rangers have a lot that they could trade. They have a lot of prospects that they could include in that deal, and if they're getting back Chychrun, they certainly could include one of their defensemen. One of their quote-unquote up and coming defensemen that they have. Obviously, we're not talking Adam Fox, but a Braden. You've got Braden Schneider, Libor Hayek, Keandre Miller, Ryan Lindgren. There's some defensemen that you can include in that deal if you're getting Chychrun back. That could really upgrade your defense for the next 3 to 4 years. If you're the Rangers, and the Rangers could include a player who would help the Arizona Coyotes in the future. I think there is a deal to be made there, and at $4.6 million a year, he's absolutely affordable. You could make it work and fit him under the cap there. So especially, I mean, I doubt that Arizona's looking to hang on to any of that salary for 3 years or 2 years left on the deal after this year, but he would be an interesting player to keep an eye out for with the Rangers. I think he might be a good fit. So.
Okay, I like that. Another player in Arizona too, who's going to be a UFA after this year, Shane Gostisbehere, kind of had a little bit of a resurgence last year, and he's on the cheap, and could be somebody that I think a team like, again, New York could potentially target, right? And now, again, I don't think New York would give up a younger defenseman or younger player to bring in a one and out guy, but he could fit in really nice with this team here. Could potentially be a third line guy and second power play guy. So
the Rangers will definitely be a team that we look to make some big splash at the deadline. I think they're
Jacob Chikrin though. I really like that, and I think if you move out a guy like Ryan Lindgren, that would look really nice on that second line with maybe Jacob Trouba, and that would be real nice.
I love it. All right, well, that is our Metropolitan Division preview. We will be back on the horse next week with another. We'll go a little faster, I think, through these divisions, but but that's part 3 of the Metro, and stay tuned for all the rest of the divisions in the National Hockey League. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, and I'm going to Traverse City this weekend. This week, I guess. I'm going up north, going to the water park with the kid and the wife, and looking forward to that. So, Justin, enjoy your regular week of work, because I had to suffer while you went to Hawaii. So
I appreciate that.
All right. And to our listeners, thank you for being here. We will talk to you guys soon.